started going summer of like '89. I was out skateboarding with my buddies and stuff, and we ran this punk rock kid, and he said, "You guys look like you should go to the show." And we were like, "What's the show?" And he gave us the flyer, and we were like, "All right, we're gonna go." And I asked my mom to take us to the place, and she was like, "I'm not taking you to that neighborhood." We caught the bus, ended up like 40 blocks away, asked a homeless dude how to get there, ended up there, and been going ever since.
What show was that?
It was a punk rock band from Erie called My Three Scum, and a couple other bands. I can't even recall. I just remember they threw Toast around, and we were like, "This is freaking crazy." You know, it was just like Erie was awesome, like in the late '80s going into the '90s, because like everything was like so together. You had like the punk rock kids, the hardcore kids, and even like hip hop kids and stuff. Like shows in the when I started going early on for me, you know, there'd be a rap group, there'd be a heavy metal group, there'd be a hardcore group, and everybody was just trying to take advantage of the fact that our city was big but not that big, and really tried to work together to make a scene. And you know, I really think that they did a great job. We did a great job. You know, it's one of the more notable scenes that I'm familiar with in hardcore, and I've been around for a little while. Running the show, probably Mike Ski. You know, he was probably he was one of the bigger, more motivated dudes in town. You know, he was good with the art. He was really good at marketing. He was really good at like being a front man and stuff. And even before he had like a band that was really noteworthy, the dude was a hard worker and stuff. You know, but collectively, you know, pretty much everybody really worked their asses off to get shit going and stuff. You know.
As far back as you know, when did Erie start its scene?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, what had happened was in '88, there was how I found out about like punk rock and what was going on was there was a radio show called Angry Red Radio that this dude Dan Allen did, and that was like the summer of '88, and they did up until that point there'd be a sporadic all ages show here or there, but they. My first show that I went to was at this place called the Repagrado, and it was this band Knife Dance from Cleveland, and My Three Scum, and then some various random old dude bands, Blood Pudding and Magoo or something. And then there was probably about maybe 5 or 6 more months, and then in February of '89 was the first show at the Continental Ballroom, which was really like, the Continental was definitely like the birthplace of Erie hardcore. Like, you know, there had been definitely some like punk rock stuff going on and everything, but probably about 6 or 7 months into shows happening at the Continental Ballroom, at the time, Mike Ski, our friend Dan Perry, this dude Rob Whipple, those guys, Jason O'Durney, those guys were going out of town a lot, going to Cleveland and Buffalo to see a lot of the like Revelation bands. When they were coming through, they'd stop in those cities, and they were developing, you know, their connections. They were starting to meet people, Scott Vogel, a lot of the dudes from like Snapcase at the time. They were Solid State, and then they started linking up with them. And then once Erie, I'd say it was probably about 7 or 8 months of solid shows at the Continental, and then Mike Ski booked. It was Outface, Solid State, and Out of Hand, or Last Warning, at the time, which was the one went right in the other. But that was the first hardcore show that we had.
Like all hardcore.
Yeah, like all hardcore.
Right.
You know.
Not a mesh of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, at the time we didn't realize how lucky we were. You know, just because it was just something that all of us gravitated towards, and it was like that one spot, because we were all, you know, you walked into school and the jocks were hating on you, everyone was hating on you, but then when you went there, it was all good, you know, you're like, all right, this is my people, you know.
It's not like it is now where like you like go skateboard and then go to football practice and go to the
Yes,
school
yeah.
dance, you know. You show up at school with like X's on your hand and be like, I hate all you people.
Well, Mike Ski, he definitely, I mean, he was probably definitely the biggest like networker of like getting the bands from Cleveland and Buffalo to start to come to Erie, and
he really gave Erie like an image too, you know. If you're gonna credit someone with the image, I mean, he did all the art for all the early flyers, all the early T-shirts, all the local bands like album covers and stuff, you know. I mean, sometimes it's crazy, but the dude did a lot, you know, for like really like establishing
putting Erie on the map.
Putting it on the map.
And, you know, I also want to say though, like dudes like Larry Weaver and Matt Zanzala
Yeah.
were the dudes that were first setting up the punk rock shows. And if it really wasn't for those dudes, and they were the first ones to book at the Continental, you know, Erie definitely wouldn't have had the same scene that it did. And those, like Matt Zanzala, he ended up running the hip hop for South by Southwest Fest, and now he has his own festival going on, you know. So it's like these people still can contribute to music still to this day, you know.
There is just so many bands, and I mean, like, you know, there'd be a band for a couple months, and then they'd play a couple gigs with another band, and then everyone would jump bands and start another band and stuff, you know. I think some of the more notable bands that really spawned like early hardcore music in Erie would be like Downpour,
Yeah. Last Man Standing.
Last Man Standing, Lost,
Out of Hand.
Out of Hand and Lost.
Yeah, Lost. Lost was sort of like our version of like Dag Nasty.
Yeah.
Sort of like
Super good
DC.
band. Super good band.
Yeah.
Super good band. And then like
Something to Prove.
Something to Prove. I mean, Something to Prove was probably like the one that really defined hardcore music in Erie. I mean, like we would play, you know, they were in the second Victory comp, the Only the Strong compilation and stuff, you know, and the drummer, this goofy guy, J-Ho, had like that was a plastic gun that he got at the toy store and painted it chrome and had in his pants, and you know that picture was in there. And then from that moment on, you'd play a show out of town, and we'd be like, "Yo, where's your gun, man?
You guys packing heat?"
You know, like those handful of bands would, I would say, be like the ones that really kind of set the standard or the precedence for like what the Erie scene was like early on and stuff. You know, it was pretty tough.
Definitely had its moments. You know, and the thing about Erie is because we were right in the middle of Cleveland and Buffalo and Pittsburgh, we really were influenced by all those scenes. So like Cleveland was like straight like metal, dirty dudes. And then Snapcase and
Like
Buffalo
pretty
were all like
guys.
super like clean cut.
Yeah.
And then Pittsburgh was straight G like gangster dudes.
Yeah.
You know, and Erie like sucked that all up, and we were like some
Balled it
weird
up.
hybrid of that. Definitely in like the mid to like late '80s, their hardcore scene was really flourishing. There was a band Battered Citizens. There's Half Life came from there, and then Submachine and Oz Rotten. But you know, Pittsburgh was definitely a weird hardcore scene. Like you could go, like Earth Crisis would play down there, and there'd be 300-400 kids. And then there'd be like a local show, and this is like in the early to mid 90s, you know. And then there'd be like 10, 15, which I'm sure, you know, a lot of scenes are like that. But you could just tell that Pittsburgh in and of itself, because it is like a college town, so there wasn't a lot of homegrown support towards
Yeah, it's true.
like that time period. The mid 80s, late 80s, it was good, and then it just sort of dipped. After Time Bomb,
Yeah, after
it
Time
sort of
Bomb.
like plateaued, and then you'd have like the random bands.
I would also say like Pittsburgh had a really heavy like skinhead scene down there and stuff. You know, like I think the bulk of the Pittsburgh scene at that time was like oi music. and a lot of
Yes,
street
yeah.
punk
If
and
you
stuff
went to like
that,
Sick
you
of It
know?
All or Agnostic
Yeah,
Front,
you
it
know,
was
like
thick
for
with
sure,
skinheads.
definitely. Out of the three cities all around us, that
Which
was,
Erie had a huge skinhead.
yeah, it
scene,
did too. And I think that fed off a lot of Pittsburgh and stuff. So I know those guys all rolled together
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Well, from Battered Citizens turned into Time Bomb, and then once those guys broke up, and then hardcore was getting a little bit more political oriented. There was bands like Passover, Chapter,
Slowpoke.
Slowpoke. Oh yeah,
Slowpoke
you
was
can't.
awesome.
Yeah, Slowpoke was amazing.
What was it? Not Autumn. What was the name?
No, but Autumn is
No,
Pennsylvania. That
yeah.
is the eastern
But
Pennsylvania.
what was the one band from that reminded me of them? Oh crap. I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry I mentioned it.
You know, and then also towards the middle to late 90s, Pittsburgh started popping again because of Mr. Roboto, like the collective they had going on down there.
And then their scene really kind of took on like a metal, you know,
Yeah.
like with like the band Chapter and then like Creation's Crucifixion,
Fiction, yes, yeah.
and stuff. You know, that scene down there really got crazy, like hard to listen to, but still awesome. I mean, don't get me wrong. But yeah, you know, the Pittsburgh scene was always like, you know, like where Erie was real consistent along the board. Like you check out a lot of those bands and everything, and you know, from Disciple to like Thick as Thieves to like Something to Prove, all those, it was kind of a constant in the approach and the sound. Where, like Pittsburgh, like it was always changing. And I think a lot of that had to do with like the college influx. You know, you have all those college kids coming through, and you know, you show up there for school, and then you're like, well, this is our scene right now, so we're gonna put this into it, you know, and it really was a melting pot more so now. Disciple was a good band in there, a lot of good guys, you know. They had a band early on called Mothership, and it was funny. It was funny because like they started their band and they all went to like high school with me and stuff, and I was like a grade or two like ahead of most of those guys and stuff, and like I was in the hardcore before them, and I was that young jaded kid, like they'd show up with their hardcore shirts. I'm like, you guys ain't hardcore, blah blah blah. And then they started those guys quite a bit and stuff, and then they put together this band Mothership and started like doing their almost like making their own scene. I mean, they would do shows at like picnic pavilions and parks and stuff, and like back parking lots of churches and stuff, and you know, outside of like their real heavy Christian music, I mean, they were some down hardcore kids. You know, they were in it to win it for the scene, and they put their heart and soul in a lot of the stuff that they did, man. And it's unbelievable how big those guys got. You know, a lot of times I feel like
we got the power of Christ.
Yeah, power of
Christ
Christ
to work out
compels
for
you.
you, I guess, man.
But you know, and sometimes like when I think about it, I feel like they maybe did more for Erie sometimes than like Brothers Keeper did sometimes and stuff. You know, so the Disciple's definitely pretty cool.
Just Shockwave
Shockwave was cool, yeah, Shockwave was cool. You know, I worked with a couple of one guy that might have been in that band, but I can't tell you his name or anything like that. And they were cool. You know, we played when I was in Who Bleeds First and Thick as Thieves and stuff. We played a couple shows with them and everything. We played with them in Los Angeles, and it was cool because I'm not into bands, so I can talk about it. You know, like I was like the one tour they did, they pretended to like running for president, and I like grew this crappy mustache out, and I would get on stage before them and introduce the band and stuff. Be like, your vote for whatever year this is, and blah blah blah, and then the flags would go up and they'd come marching in from the back and stuff and whatnot. And, you know, it was always a good time. And the best thing about Shockwave is, you know, that was like the biggest joke that freaking succeeded ever in the whole world. You know. They were all from like different bands and traded their instruments up and sang about Transformers and sometimes G.I. Joe guys. And now like kids in Europe freaking want to like throw money at them to like come and play a show. That's probably never gonna happen. So when you hear that rumor that there's a Shockwave show, it's not gonna happen.
And talk about
I was in this band one-sided. Like after we found out about hardcore music and stuff like that, going to like a couple of early Continental shows and stuff. This guy had already had a band going and stuff, Break Iron and stuff, and we were going to the shows and we seen the kids with the X's and everything and stuff. And I remember we went up to him and after the show, me and my buddy Chuck Wakeman, and we were like, "Hey man, what's up with like straight edge? Like, what do you got to do to be straight edge?" And he was like, "Do you smoke?" We were like, "Nope." He's like, "Do you drink?" We're like, "Nope." He's like, "Do you have sex?" We're like, "Nope." He goes, "You're straight edge." We were like,
at the time, I was really trying to recruit as many people as I could for my army.
So then we went out and we started. Our first band was called One Sided, and it later on it had members that later on went on to do like Brothers Keeper. Like the drummer went on to do Brothers Keeper. I went on to be in Abnegation with him and a couple other guys afterwards until my mom told me I couldn't go play a show in Indiana. I had to like quit the band and stuff. And we had that for like a summer. And then when I was doing that, they needed a bass player for Abnegation. So then I got into doing Abnegation for the first cassette demo tape and then into the recording for the first 7-inch. And then my mom, like literally, I was 15 years old, and I was like, we were going out of town. I wasn't telling her, but we were gonna go to Indiana, and I was like, well, I gotta tell her about this. And she was like, shh, you are not going. So then I was like, I gotta get out of the band. So I lined him up with my buddy Donnie, who was awesome.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. He's an awesome kid. A lot of people know Donnie Denard. One of the best dudes from the Erie scene ever, man. And taught him all the songs and all that stuff, and then they were getting in the car to go, and my mom was like, "Oh, well, I guess you can go." And I was like, well, "I'm already out of the band," and stuff. So then, from that, I went on to do a band called Strike 3 with this Kid Lake Effect Leroy, who's another notable Erie guy who's old now and just takes care of his kids and stuff. And then from that, we did Thick as Thieves, which was out on the Disciple Kids record label, Angel Skin Media. It was the only other release that they put out besides their release and stuff. And then that went on for a couple years, and that's pretty good. A lot of good touring. Somehow kids actually heard about that. Every once in a while I hear people tell me it was a good band and stuff. And then I got into the latest band I did was Who Bleeds First. And we did that for, I don't even know, freaking almost 10 years or something like that. And that was a lot of fun and everything. And now I'm not doing a band at all. I teach music for a living. So that's how I keep it going.
I was just in two bands, two serious bands.
Very serious.
Break Iron and then Abnegation. Abnegation was pretty much like the first straight edge band in Erie, and it was also, we were all about the vegan revolution, everything, and changing the world. But
Breaking your cigarettes and spitting.
yeah, we definitely at the time were motivated, very motivated about what we believed in and everything. And we did a fair. I wouldn't necessarily say it was touring because we would have 2 shows and then have no shows for like 5 or 6 days, and then have another show, and then like a week where we would just stay at like a truck stop and stuff. But it was always a good time, whether we were broke and not able to eat, or whether we had like someone's couch to crash on or whatever. It was pretty cool. Hardcore, and especially being where we were from, really gave us a lot of opportunities that growing up, when you see these kids that are, I don't know, just kids just don't realize what else is out there and what we got from the scene, you know what I mean? And that's why all of us are still involved in it somewhere or another,
Mm-hmm.
Like Human Animal, which is EMS's band, they just played, and when stuff like that happens, when it's all a bunch of your homies from back in the day, and they're playing a show, you do everything you can to get out there just to go check them out,
And then you take your kids.
And then I got to take my kid to his first hardcore show. What did I get out? I mean, I got my self-esteem. I got friends that I have a brother that I wasn't very close with growing up, and I really learned brotherhood through that. Through getting involved in hardcore and punk rock. Like those dudes, to this day, I know that I could pick up my phone and call on them, and they'll be right there no matter what. And it's all because of growing up the way we did, and
Yeah, I would say I think hardcore music definitely gave me a better sense of family sometimes than like my family did and stuff, for sure. Like a lot of those dudes that I saw when I was 15, I talk to more regularly than I do like my cousins and stuff like that. And like when major family events and shit like that happens, it's like those dudes are like first on the list and stuff. And like you said, definitely it gave you that confidence and helped you find out who you were. It gave you.
You didn't really care that everyone hated you at school.
No,
because you had all your dudes, that you're
and
hanging
it
out
gave you something to
afterwards.
believe in too, man. It
Right,
gave you so many convictions at a young age. Where like the way the music scene of the world is now, I feel like a lot of the kids that are that age now don't have any idea what it's like to care about something, like be passionate about something, like think that something's actually going to change somebody's life. And I think that's what hardcore did for me.